Hey guys, what's up? It's La coming back to ya with another episode of Walk Switch La. And for now, I kind of, yeah, I don't. So, what I was talking about before, it's on the tip of my tongue, but I may have just forgotten it. I may have just forgotten what I was actually talking about, sadly, in the last episode. Because I remember clearly I never even had got to it. I guess just stemming on what I think I was talking about was something like, it's just frustrating because it's basically like imagine I'm looking at the accounting sheet and I'm saying things are wrong. This is wrong here. That's wrong there. Let's start fixing it. And then people just don't really listen to me. And then as the days and the months go on, I'm more informed. I try to spread good information when I can, but it's like zero other people are doing that. And overall, no progress is really being made. And it's obvious that the system is just going to collapse at some point. And it's more painful because I can see it. I mean, if I was ignorant like everybody else, I probably wouldn't even care. And could probably be living a somewhat decent life, but it's always been in that situation where I feel like I'm always waiting for everybody. I've talked about this recently, but it's actually incredibly fatiguing and painful. And that's how I think it answers my question about patience is that it's like, yeah, I mean, I think I am really patient. It's just that with other people, they're so slow that it's impossible. I mean, it really gets to the point where it just wears at you because I'm fast. I mean, the degree that I process things, how I process things emotionally, for example, like it's fast and I'm ready to just work through disagreements and get to the bottom of things, like it's rapid fire because I don't understand what the point is of playing around and fooling around, and like needing space and needing time to process. I don't really need time, like any time at all to process anything. Like I feel like when somebody does something hurtful to me, I'm just able to talk about it then and there. Like it doesn't really, there's not really that needed time that I've noticed with everybody else. It seems like if something hurtful is said to them, they need like a couple hours to scroll through TikTok. They need a couple hours to think about it. No, 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 wait, listen. They need an hour to vent to someone about it. Even if they're dead wrong, they just have to vent about what happened. So, no, sorry. Let's rewind even further. So, I end up saying something to someone that's 100% true. It's 100% something they need to hear, they should hear. And let's say it's in a circumstance where I really have to say it. I mean, that happens in life where it's like you can't really sugarcoat something. There's certain things where, I'm going to say it because I'm aware of it. Now, this might be a thing that for most people, they're not aware of it. So when you talk about like the future with someone and you're talking about financial trajectories, a lot of people are still delusional with thinking they're going to be able to retire, thinking they're going to have vacations, and they feel entitled to these things when if you look at the macroeconomics, that's just not going to be available for the majority of people. It's just that's those things are just not going to be a thing anymore. But anyways, the main point is, let's say that I tell someone something and it's like it hits hard and it's the truth, but they don't want to learn it and they don't want to accept it. But it's like I don't really have much of a choice because if I don't tell them, then it's going to bug me. And then I also sort of feel like it's morally gray because I probably should be speaking up about it and trying to help the person, and then I'm not. So it feels morally gray. And like, so I have to speak up about it. I have to just say the truth. And then the other person gets so intensely upset, so significant and intensely upset, that they just have to withdraw. They just start saying things like, I don't want to talk to you anymore, etc., etc. I have had this happen to me a lot before, where it's like, I will never be the person to end the conversation early. I feel like in any argument I've had, in casual debate with a person, they always get tired of talking to me and then they go off and do something else. I'm usually there. I'm usually the person to send the last message, even after hours of texting, for example. I've consistently just had this appetite for words and the exchange of language at a degree that I've literally never met anybody like me. There probably are some people out there, but I've got to be within like the top 1% just for like verbal stamina. And then also, because you have to couple that with an additional skill. It's not just verbal stamina, it's also emotional resilience. It's like the ability to be having a conversation and to not take things so personal, and to not take things in a mature, well, to handle things in a mature passion. Like, there was that example of that one guy who was calling me stupid. He was calling me all that, even worse. I'm not really going to repeat the words he was using, but let's just say he was using some pretty terrible words to describe me. And that didn't really stop me. I didn't really get too jostled by it. I mean, I felt it. I obviously felt it. It felt hurtful for certain. It was not an experience that was pleasant, but I was able to detach from that and still focus on the debate and the argument. And whereas he was getting offended when I was typing in all lowercase, people like to use caps lock, but they like to do all this crazy stuff. I've learned, and I have such a calm temperament even in the face of these like emotionally tense situations. And so anyways, so for example, then say I'm in an argument with someone and they just leave. Like they don't feel like arguing with me anymore. I'm right, they're wrong. And it's something where there's not too much opinion to be had. Because here's the thing. I know that certain circumstances there are opinions, but in a lot of circumstances there is a predominant fact that is, I mean, it's either mostly true most of the time, or it's essentially a fact. I mean, I know that there is some subjective wiggle room with a lot of things, but for the most part, there is objective. And it seems like most people I talk to, they always like to think that everything is an opinion and anybody can have any opinion and there's no cost to that. And it's like every single person I meet, I basically have to lecture them like, no, they're probably most things you can calculate that they're wasteful or they're immoral or they're not fair. So I guess when you get into objectivity, because again, so here's where it gets tricky. Because some people don't care about whether something's fair or not, and they don't care about whether something's moral or not. So that kind of makes what is right or wrong kind of blurry. Because for me, if something's unfair, it's wrong. And then for somebody else, it's unfair, and that's fine. So when I say objectively right or wrong, that is kind of, yeah, that's not, there's more nuance to it than that. So I'm just trying to explain this as best I can. It's a complicated subject, but yes, I'm not trying to say like concretely, but what I encounter for the most part is when there is an objective answer that, like, if anybody wanted to, they could come to the conclusion of it through calculation and education. Most people don't understand it. Like, they hear the words I'm saying, but they can't learn it or understand it. And so because they can't understand it, instead of admitting that, they just want to call me stupid. You know what I'm saying? Or even if they understand it, they don't really want to believe it, and they might be so shocked, and they might actually be like, "Oh wow, he might have a point. I don't want to hear this anymore. I want to go back into my delusion." Or they just still think I'm wrong, even though I'm trying to explain how there is an objectivity to things. It's not like everything is just up to interpretation and opinion. That just doesn't make any sense. And I really think the only reason people think like that is because of, the modernization of things and just how isolated we all are. You don't really always. Dang, I forgot to start my workout. Anyways, I could the walking thing. It still tracks my steps, but anyways, yeah, there's like what am I saying? I know I always forget to do that. Um, the thing is, but yeah, no, the point is, and here's the problem. People are always leaving in the middle of debates. If it's a debate with versus against me, or it's an argument, they're either leaving or they lose interest and they lose focus after, such a period of time, and they just have to go back to like playing a video game or scrolling on social media. Like, it's very frustrating. I guess I obviously have this insatiable hunger for words, and I'm living in a time where that is, I mean, it's a good thing, but it's very frustrating for the people in my personal life, my friends, my family, the relationships I've had. It's horrible. I mean, because I'm like I'm ready for some progress. Like, let's just talk things through. Let's figure things out. Let's come up to a fair and good mutual conclusion. And then nobody ever wants to do that. They just want to keep things unfair in their favor and selfish in their favor. And then this is the craziest part. I try to explain, and I give a perfect explanation as to how it is selfish in their favor, sorry, not flavor, favor, and they still won't listen. And then they still do this thing where you ditch me, you leave me in the middle of a conversation, and it's like, what is going on? We're not done talking. Like, we didn't actually solve anything. And then again, it's like, imagine this person goes off, vents to somebody for 30 minutes. They're still, that helps them get a little bit less upset. Then they have to scroll social media for an hour or two to try to get some dopamine up in there to calm their nerves because they got all angry and fired up from the conversation. Then after that, maybe they need to play a video game for an hour or two to get their frustration out on something else. And then they might need to sleep it off. Then they might have to go to bed. And then it's only after that that the next day the person may be ready to talk, right? Then they decide that it's time to talk. And then we'll only talk for, again, it's like 15 or 20 minutes, and then they're already tired and they didn't even hear anything I said, and then it's the same cycle. You know what I mean? And then I'm here trying to be as reasonable as I can, as fair as I can, as generous. But after a while, when this is like every single person you've ever known is like this to you, and it just feels like you're just always waiting, they're just off ignoring you or something because of their emotional state. I just don't understand people's pride. Like, if you want to be smart, then you have to like do research and actually have some kind of skill with words, or you need to accomplish something. Like, you can't just have a huge ego when you haven't really done anything with your life. I feel like so many people, they have these massive egos, and it's just totally unwarranted. And so that makes you a very fragile person. And I've explained before, it's different. I mean, if somebody's a millionaire, I would expect them to have some type of ego about that, because that's only reasonable. I mean, that makes sense if you're that successful that you would have some kind of an ego, or if you're particularly good at a certain thing and somebody's trying to like give you like silly advice and they're obviously uneducated about it. I think in some cases an ego's fair. And see, this is where what I try to do is I try to rationalize, I try to be reasonable with people. It's like I tell them, like, look, if you're gonna have an ego, you at least need to have something about yourself to back that up. You have to be an exceptional person in some kind of way. You can't just have this degree of an ego when you haven't really done anything to deserve that. You should be more humble, right? And this is what I always try to explain, because I've already mentioned for myself, I have no problem being humble. Now, that guy in that debate claimed that he said something about like wanting power and control, and I'm like, how am I wanting power and control if I'm talking about using surveillance in a very public way to be able to create a fairer society where you can lift up people in poverty? Like, that is not power or control. That's trying to flatten things a little bit. It's trying to make things fairer. It's not. I can't believe like how much people misunderstand what I say. Like I mentioned, it's like I say a paragraph. No, it's more like I type a page and then they just read like one sentence in that page and just take that one sentence out of context and then just respond to that and think that they know me. I mean, it's crazy. Like I just cannot understand the way I've been treated. And of course, like, look at all the reflection I'm doing. Look at all the inward thinking and like, trying to figure out, well, what did I do wrong? And I've taken the what I said and I asked GPT about it and I see where I was wrong and I improved and I grew from that. Now, the other person, they probably just never even opened the chat again. They just didn't care. They moved on to something else in their life, and they just probably end up thinking that they were right. And then I was just some crazy guy, which I guess you could argue I am crazy because I'm a deviant from the norm, but it's like, really, I just don't understand. I mean, a lot of these traits of mine, they're actually extremely needed, especially for this time, but mostly for the future. You need people who are like me. You need a lot of people who think in the way I do to tackle a lot of these issues as humanity progresses. You really don't need these people who are not really able to handle much, who have these like giant egos. And I've already explained it before too. I'm humble to the point where like I'm at peace with, if I needed to go, then that's fine. Like, if I'm not good enough for the future because I still feel like I have my fair share of flaws, then I guess that's how it's going to be. Like, there's no, I shouldn't have an unfair advantage over other people just cause. I don't really think anybody should, unless they really deserve it, like I said. And in my case, I mean, it's possible that when I get older, maybe I will, I don't know, get more rounded out. But what I'm saying is not to, I'm just explaining it to say, like, there's not like this massive ego. And it's like everybody I talk to, it feels like they have this huge, like, ego bubble around themselves that, like, it's like, let's say there's like multiple bubbles and it's like even popping the way outer bubble. It's like, the onion and the layers, right? It's like everybody has all these layers, and even the outer layer, if that gets poked, they start throwing a fit. And I don't even get it because most of these people are like I mean they're fragile. They're not really all that, but they for it seems like they act so narcissistic. And really the only finger I can point on is, again, it's like technology use, and it's how any person really that doesn't know anything at this point can just like pick up a phone and start scrolling TikTok and really deeply saturate their brain with dopamine so that they feel like a god. I think that's genuinely what happens. I mean, in the past, for a while, it was only like certain kinds of people who maybe liked video games, and that was like the highest form of dopamine back then. But then that was kind of made fun of, and people who liked video games, they were a little bit weird. Like it wasn't like it is now. Now it's like video games are common, they're cool, and not only that, but social media scroll is arguably more dopamine, and it's with less effort, definitely less effort. It's definitely a more efficient dopamine to effort ratio. And yeah, I mean, I think this gives people this like ego rush because people who in the past, I mean, even in the original days of technology, you really had to put effort into achieving your dopamine. Whereas nowadays, you can basically be like poverty and you can get a smartphone like extremely cheap that's actually pretty good because the smartphones that are cheap now are still like very competent, and you can intoxicate yourself with mobile games that are like able to hijack your dopamine stronger than before, with TikTok, Instagram, social media that again effortlessly saturate your brain with dopamine. I think this gives people a godlike feeling, and so they feel like the same as somebody who in the past you would have only reached that state if you really worked hard and earned it. Now you have a bunch of people that reach that state because they feel powerful just because of the phone, and they don't even know how any of it works. If you sat them in front of a computer, they probably couldn't even explain it, but they still feel like a god, and so they act like that. So then when there's a flaw with something they do, they freak out. They're not used to it because on their social media, they're constantly used to being fed this stream of favorable content. Anyways, it's been schla, and now it's time to buy schla. So, see you schla.